Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and this video is going to be dedicated to factoring quadratics. And this is just another way to solve for x in quadratic equations, other than the quadratic formula as seen in another video. Alright, so let's get started. So if you guys remember, this is the quadratic equation, and what the SAT and ACT a lot of times will test is to see if you know how to solve for x in these equations. Alright, so you can use two ways. The first way that you can use is the quadratic formula, which, as I said before, I went over in another video. But then this video is going to be dedicated to solving for x using factoring, which I will explain in a second. Okay? So if you revert back to the quadratic formula, remember that when I use A, B, and C, they're just placeholders. It can be random numbers that the SAT or ACT uses in the problem, right? And they're really just placeholders to show you guys what's happening. Okay, so let's look at an example to kind of demonstrate what I mean by factoring, right? So what you want to do is when you look at, like, for example, let's look at this quadratic equation, and if you see A is equal to 1 in this scenario, and then 3 would equal B in this scenario, and negative 4 would equal C in that scenario, if you're confused on how this is the same thing as that, basically, So what I mean by factoring is really breaking it down into two different factors. So if you, and remember, let me tell you what factoring is. So factors are two numbers that can be multiplied to get two numbers or terms that can be multiplied together to get a certain value. So what we're going to do is try to find the factors of the quadratic, right here. So what we're looking for here is two terms that if you multiply them together, you would get this term, right? So what I've broken it down into is the two factors already for you, just so you can see what process I used, right? And you can see this to check your work. So in order to check that I did this right, what we're going to do is the FOIL method. I also did another video on the FOIL method if you want to revert back to that so you can really understand what I'm talking about. But in quick, easy steps, we're going to first multiply these terms together, and these terms together, and these and this. Alright? So in order to get this term, you would multiply these two terms, the first and the third term together, and that would get you that x squared. And then to get that 3x, what you're going to do is multiply by the first term by the fourth term that you see, and then you're going to add that to the second term times the third term. So in this case, it would be 4x since you multiply those together, and then plus negative 1x, which is basically x. So since it's a positive, like minus a negative, what we're going to get is actually 4x minus x, which is equal to 3x, and that's how you get that number right there. And then you go from the second, you multiply the second term times that fourth term, and that's how you get that negative 4 because you're multiplying negative 1 times 4, right? And that's still going to equal 0. Right? So that's what I'm talking about when I mean factoring, in that what you're doing is trying to break down this quadratic equation so that you can clearly see the two x values that would make the equation equal. Alright, so let's get started. Let's get started solving with some examples. Alright, so my first example is x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. So this will help demonstrate how you do factoring if it's a coefficient of 1, right? So let's start. Let's draw our parentheses first. This is what I like to do to kind of break it down and get it into an easy to see format, right? Right, so first we're going to put x and x here, right? And if you remember from your first step in the FOIL method, you want this because you know that this first term times this third term has to equal this one. And in this case, you know it's x squared, so you know this has to be x, and then times another x, right? So then we're going to move on to kind of solving for, let's go with the second and the fourth term. All right, so this is the process that I like to break it down into. So first, you're going to find these two numbers right here. And then you're going to find out some factors of 6, right? Because what you're going to do, as seen in this problem, you multiply the second by the fourth step. And that's going to help get you this number right here. All right, so we're going to start off doing that. All right, so let's think of some factors of 6. And remember what I said factors were? Two numbers or terms that you multiply together to get to a number. So in this case, what I just asked you, what two numbers multiplied together get 6, right? So if you look over here, I think that 1 and 6 multiplied together equals 6, and 2 times 3 multiplied together to get to 6. So these are the two pairs that could go in this or in this spot, right? All right, so let's start getting started with trying to figure out which one could go in these parentheses. So let's start off with this first pair that we see, this 1 and 6, and since this is positive, we can go plus 1 and plus 6, right? So let's test it. We know that if you multiply these two together, you get x squared, so we're great to start off with, right? And then if you multiply 1 times that 6, you know you get 6. But let's check to see if you do, remember this step and this step, let's see if we would get 5x in the middle, right? To see if it's actually the correct way that you factor. So let's go here, and first we can test this. So you get 6x, and then it's plus 1x, so just plus x, and that would equal 7x. So that means because it equals 7x and not 5x, 1 and 6 cannot go together, right? So let's change that. Let's try the other set of factors to see if those work. Alright, so we're going to try 2 and 3. So let's try 2, and let's try 3. Alright, so let's try it. We have x times x, which is great, and 2 times 3 we know equals 6. And then we can start here, so let's try this first term times the fourth term, so 3x plus 2x and equals 5x. Alright, so that's how you know that x plus 2 and x plus 3 equals 0. You know that these two are the two factors that you can multiply together to get this quadratic equation of x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. And then you may be wondering, okay, she told me that this is to help you solve for x. So here's what I'm going to do. You can set both of these equal. So you can set x plus 2 equal to 0 and x plus 3. Because if one of these equals 0, you know that it has to, the whole thing has to equal 0, because anything multiplied by 0 equals 0. Right? That's why you set each of these equal to 0, because you know that's how you get the entire equation to equal 0. Alright, so let's solve for x using the knowledge that we know from back with pandas. And you can see x equals, you subtract 2 from both sides, so -2, and x would equal -2, or x can equal, remember we do -3 on both sides to get this, or x equals -3. And that would be how you get your answers for a quadratic equation, for factoring a quadratic equation with the coefficient of 1. Alright, so let's move on to our second example of one without a coefficient of 1. Alright, so let's talk about this a little bit. We're going to use the same process as we did before, except we have to really notice that this is a 2, not a 1. Right? So we're going to use the same process as we did before, in that you know that the first times the third term has to equal this value right here, right? So we used it right here when we knew that x times x equals x squared. But now, let's think of the factors of 2, for example, right? So we know that the only factors of 2 are 1 and 2, and you multiply these together, and they get 2. Those are the only factors of 2. All right? So you know that it has to be 2x times x in the first and third slot, because if you multiply them together, you get this term right here, which is what you're looking for. All right, so then what we're going to do when we're factoring is then you look at this third number right here, which is c in this case. All right, so we're going to look at 3 right here, and we're going to try to find the factors of 3. All right, just like we did with 6 on this problem. So the factors of 3 are 1 and 3. All right, so you know that 1 and 3 are right there, and let's see if we can just plug them in, see if they work. So let's say plus 3 and plus 1, right? And that would equal 0. So let's test it out to see if my method actually works here. So let's go 2x times x equals 4x squared, which is, or 2x squared, sorry about that, 2x squared, which we like. And then we're going to look over here, so we have 3 times 1, that equals 3, we like that too. So let's check the middle ones to see if they work as well. So first you take this one and you multiply it by this, so that's 2x, and then you add it to 3 times x, which is 3x, and that gets you 5x. But there's a problem. These, the first times the fourth term and the second times the third term, are supposed to equal this middle term, but they don't. All right, so you have, in this scenario, you have to find a different way to move this 3 and the 1 around, because you know that they're the only 2 numbers that can go in these outside terms, right? They're only numbers, right? So what we're going to see is, let's put them into a different position. Let's see if they work out. So I can put, let me try the 1 here, and try the 3 over here. Remember, you're using the same exact factors. All you're doing is playing with the numbers in a different spot to see if it would work that way, right? So let's go with our first step of multiplying 2x times x, which is 2x squared, which is exactly what we're looking for in this first term. And then we look for the last term. So we're going to do 1 times that 3, and that equals 3, which is great. And then let's look at these, the first times the fourth term, so that gets us 2x times 3 equals 6x, and it's 1 times x equals x, so we're just going to say that's 7x, and that's what we're looking for with this middle term. So you know that 2x plus 1 and x plus 3 have to be the factors, because if you multiply these together using this FOIL method that we've been talking about, that's how you would get this, and that's how you know that those are the factors, because you can multiply them together to get that number, this quadratic equation. That's how you know those are the factors. And let's continue to solve for x like we have been in this other problem. So you set, remember you set one of the parentheses equal to 0, and then the other one. 0. All right, so then you do -1 or -1 from each side. It's 2x equals -1, and then x, and then you can divide by 2 to get rid of that 2 on each side. 2, and then you get x can equal -1/2, and then on this side you can just do, let's subtract 3 from both sides, and x also equals -3. Alright, so those are how you solve things. Alright, so let's take a quick recap of what we learned in this video. Alright, so this was factoring quadratic equations. Just a reminder, this is the basic format for the foundation for a quadratic equation, and this is a quick example of one if you get lost. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to find the 2 factors. If you multiply them together, that's how you get a quadratic equation. And these are our 2 examples. And yeah. yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching this video.